Okay, so thank you for being with us this early morning. We'll start with a keynote session from Marius Dupuis, who is the CEO of ASAM, the German, I would say, even international standardization organization, responsible for many standards which are concerning our community. So we had lots of talks about that already yesterday. Marius was also a CEO of Virus for close to 25 years, so the father of many things, especially Virus, with VTD, the Virus company with VTD and some other products. So he's a real international expert in our community. And he'll talk about ASAM today. So, Marius, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Andras, for having me here. Thanks for the ones who made it this early morning here. So these are either the guys and ladies who cannot sing or couldn't bear hearing the others sing. So whatever the reason, thank you so much for being here. I'm trying to make it short-lived and try to catch up with the time so that we will be on time for the next session. Thanks, Andras, for the introduction. My preferred father role is being father of 4 kids, by the way, not being father of all the standards, but and they are all not standard, my kids, I have to say. So this is what matters in life. What I wanted to talk a little bit about is the journey we had. We have been, communicating like for the past 25 years around standards, about data formats, about simulation. And I get frequently asked what are standards, or what is it what ASAM does? And I have a little illustration here, so one or the other may have seen it before, but what ASAM does are basically specifications, and the specification in the old days comes as a paper that you can read and that you can implement. And implementing means you unfold that paper, so you give it volume, and the paper is basically your framework. So the framework that allows you in a data format, for example, to provide a container. This is a container. So the standard, the document becomes a container. And you put your IP into this container. And because it's standard, for whoever is the consumer of your IP or the content or the data content that is there, it's not apparent what is in there, but it's apparent, and it's really important that it looks the same as from another company. And this is why you can implement it, because if you can handle these containers, you don't matter so much what is inside it, but you can use them in your tools because you have the interface to these containers. And this is what standards are there for. So to make it a little bit more tangible, because otherwise I can just point to websites where you can read documents. Anyway, so we had a long journey, and it's from simulation to software-defined vehicle. This is the title. I think we have to look at various trends, but first I want to look back a little bit, and again, what is the value of these standards? What is the value of these containers? This is what is the motivation to have standards? The motivation is when you create something, and this is like if you implement a software, or if you work with a tool and you create data with that tool, let's say scenario files. In the beginning, it were road data files that were most crucial. Then you have a specific format, and then you create that asset, which is shown here in the first triangle. But once you change the vendor, and this was before the standards came into place, when you changed the vendor, you could not reuse that specific asset that you had built, because there was a different format that you had to fulfill, so you had to rebuild the assets. And this happened with each vendor switch. Depending on where you are in your development stage, whenever you switched the vendor, you had to rebuild the asset, because the data could not be directly migrated or reused between different vendors. You could convert, but conversion, as we all know, means losing data. At some point, losing accuracy, losing features, whatever it is. And now with the standards, what we do, we say, you just reuse, if everyone is complying with the standards, then you can just reuse whatever you did in the first stage, and you can take it when you switch the vendor of the tool. So this means over time you keep your assets and you build a large library of data that you can reuse at any stage in your development. And this was the motivation why ASAM came into place, that the OEMs wanted to have a clear choice in the market among tool vendors, and the tool vendors, for sure, they wanted to sell to all the OEMs. So standards create markets with easy access from both sides, and hopefully for the better, because there's scalability and you don't have to redo all the debugging, etc., again and again. OpenX. So OpenX is everything around, OpenDRIVE, OpenSCENARIO, OpenLabel. Since I'm invited here, and I think it's now exactly 18 years that I spoke in Paris at the DSC. So it's great to be back on stage. Every 18 years is a good cycle, I think, so people don't remember what I said in the previous time, except for you, for sure, Andreas, you know what I told. But let's look a little bit at the history. You all use, or many of you use OpenDRIVE, but there was a time before OpenDRIVE. And this was when roads had to be described, and we, as a tool vendor in our early days, we had to describe the same road for different software applications. And this meant, even though it's the same road, in reality, it was a different road for different simulators because there were different features. One was a discretized description where you had to choose how long your line segments are. One was an analytical description where you had to provide the parameters for the functions, for the spirals, etc., etc. So even though it was the same road and was the coming out of the same tool, the format that it ended up described two different roads. And what they then came up with in this OpenDRIVE initiative is to make sure that if you have one road described in the OpenDRIVE format and then give it to the simulators and they understand OpenDRIVE, then the road is the same road as an input. What the simulators make from that road, that's up to the simulators for sure. But from a tool vendor's perspective, and this was our role, we delivered the same road description to different simulator operators. And this was very important because we could do the debugging up front, make sure that the data format is correct, make sure all the data is there, and then on the implementation side, that was done from the simulator vendors. So this is the long story short. Well, since I'm old enough now to look a little bit back in history, when did it start again? OpenDRIVE was really the beginning of all of these OpenX things, and it was in my company where we started it. But it was a community from the beginning, and this is very clear. And I hope I do not forget too many people who are here in the room who have been part of that journey. I excuse in advance for just if I forget someone. But the first idea from OpenDRIVE was based on the Daimler Drive format and in close cooperation with BMW at that point, because BMW and Daimler wanted to exchange databases, road databases, that said this is not the competitive edge to describe the road. This is just something we all need, and we are all better off if we have a large library that we can reuse. And this was the idea at the beginning. We decided to use something based on Daimler Drive format, made it an XML, made it OpenDRIVE, added lots of features, etc. But this was in 2005, when we also registered the website opendrive.org. And then DSC 2006, we first presented it to the community. I even found that old picture we took at that time for the presentation. I made it small because the resolution is really terrible. But this was DSC was the first time and was like, helping us to spread the word out and to collect the remaining parts of the community. Then, after the road, came the road surface, which started somehow around 2008, 2009. OpenCRG, also mostly driven by German OEMs at that time. CRG was again a format by Daimler. We made it public and did a whole open source software around it called OpenCRG. And then the fun starts in 2006, we already saw there might be something coming after OpenDRIVE because the road alone is not sufficient. We also will, at some point in the future, we will need to describe also scenarios. This means the dynamic parts. And in 2006, we reserved the website OpenSCENARIO.org without ever knowing when it would come into place, when it would become active. And then in 2015, we had a poster session again at DSC with the OpenSCENARIO, and this was also in cooperation with the guys from ACS, from Porsche, and from others. So I don't know if Alexander is here, so also the ACS guys were highly involved in this OpenSCENARIO. But you see from having the vision in 2006 that the scenario might become active to having it out in 2015 was a long stretch. But anyway, we did it. What we had in the beginning was, and this was, there was no organization. We weren't even knowing about ASAM at that time, frankly speaking, and there was no organization really looking at simulation standards. So it was all driven from within the community, from, let's say, among friends who convened, but there were also companies like Volvo were in there. So it was getting quite international, but it was all self-organized and mostly done in spare time that we had to do the standards. Was very well accepted, etc. But it was still owned by a single company, and this is not what you want to have for a standard for sure. You want to make sure that there's no barrier in accessing the data. And then in 2018, we transferred all the standards we had up till then, also OpenDRIVE, OpenCRG, OpenSCENARIO to ASAM. This is the picture also taken at the DSC, I think on TEEP at some point. So DSC is the big fate here for us. And then by giving it to ASAM, there was the chance to having structured project groups, having a review process, etc. So making it just in the orderly way so that you were sure that you got these containers from a well-trusted organization. I just felt I want to tell this story because I think it's interesting to see how 25 years stretch out, or now it's, well, this is 20 years here on that scale, how they stretch out, and yeah, what can still be done today with it. Good. Then this was the beginning, and this is the other thing. We made a big impact at ASAM because ASAM had no simulation standards up to then, and by transferring the different OpenDRIVE, OpenCRG, and OpenSCENARIO to ASAM started a new domain, and this was the OpenX domain, and this helped ASAM grow. What you can see here is in the box on the right, in 2018, after we transferred the standards to ASAM, the growth in number of members just accelerated considerably. It's leveling off because the market is now mature for this part, so we need to find the next sexy thing that comes up for standardization at some point. And this is why I'm talking about SDV and other things later in these slides. But again, there was a need in the market, there was a need to have access by everyone in the market to it, and it really served the community, and it served ASAM as an association because we grew with the members, and this meant we had more resources to work on further standards. So I think you all know what ASAM is. I'll try to make it short for the sake of time. So ASAM is basically, we do the standards from members of the community, experts of the community, for the whole community. So it's like a life cycle that we have there. What is the good thing about doing it in an organization? It's financed by the membership fees. It's regulated because we have our rules, how we do standards, and hopefully it's well accepted in the community. So what's the value of standards? Usually if you talk to some people in the US, they say, well, standards takes a long time. We are faster and happier alone, so for us, the time to market is the most important thing. If you talk to all the other guys, and also the US has meanwhile seen that ADAS and AD cannot be done alone, so it's an interplay of different players. Well, what we create is we have the possibility to have everyone connected in the market, so tool vendors and tool consumers, they can interact seamlessly. We can have independent marketplaces. Again, this is something where I want to point to our friends from ASCS with the invited marketplace, or to Safety Pool, who are also here as an exhibitor. We can quantify compliance with standards, because if we know what the standards look like, we can check if someone is compliant with the standards, and we can provide references that serve over a long time. So there's a monetary value in it. There's a value in that you get a choice, because there's an offer in the market that is standard compliant. There is trustworthiness in terms of quantifying how good standards are implemented. And there's something to work with for the engineer. And ASMINI, although it's not officially called a reference for OpenSCENARIO, is still used by everyone as though it was. And so I think it's just good to put it here as one key reference for implementations. Good. After 19 years, what have we done? No, not everything worked, but what we got right, I think, is we have created the right kind of ownership, the availability of the standards, the dissemination by an organization, and the formats are quite mature. So if you compare it to a credit card, the layout is great. What still needs a little bit alignment, and this is when you go to a typical coffee shop at some airport or whatever, interpretation, implementation. I would wish there was only one of these card readers, and meanwhile it's in most supermarkets you have it, but this was something that embarrassed me when I was at a coffee shop trying to get a coffee for my credit card. And how are we addressing it at ASAM? Well, we do many things. We now have, you might have seen it last week, we had a workshop on quantifying simulation quality. We have quality checkers coming into place to make sure that people are aligned with the standards, etc. So, and yeah, if you see something we are not addressing, just let me know. I'm here at the booth. I'm on LinkedIn, etc. That's not a problem to get in touch. If you look at ASAM, this is just the pitch. If you look at what ASAM is doing besides simulation, because, well, this is the driving simulation conference, so all we talk about usually is simulation here. But there's a lot more, and ASAM has existed since 1998, so there was a time before 2018 when the simulation standards came in, which are all depicted here. Also with things now coming into place like the ODD definition. But ASAM has always been also in the vehicle with measurement and calibration, diagnostics data, with the test execution, etc., with data formats for measurement data like MDF, with data services, ASAM ODS format, etc., and this ASAM XIL is the interface to the test benches. So our world is much richer than only simulation, with simulation being a heavyweight. But this is the good thing, because we can cover then many parts of the development cycle of the vehicles and of the deployment cycle, and see also where simulation has its role. And outside, and this is very important, if you look at our website currently, there is the ASAM test specification coming up it's an ongoing project. But there's the call for the next phase of the project. This is looking at test environments versus test methods, and this is where simulation has its place, because for software in the loop, hardware in the loop, driver in the loop, all the fancy things we see here on the exhibition floor, you need to align the methods with the environments, and this is something where, I don't know, everyone who is involved in vehicle development or ADAS function development should be involved also. To harmonize what needs to be done there. And this goes across not only the simulation standards, but across a lot of other standards where we try to get the big picture done so that we are ready for what might be the next generation of vehicles when the architectures change, etc. So I'm not reading out this. So what's next? Maybe it's not, well, I haven't seen it here as a key topic on the presentations, because this is the simulation session, but anyway, we need to know what we need to simulate in the future, so we need to see where the vehicle is going in the future. We have today we have and it's also important for how you design your hill in the future, because today you have dedicated ECUs who are fully integrated, who have a certain function, and I don't know, you get from your camera an object list and things like this. Dedicated hardware with dedicated software. What is changing is the complete layout of the vehicle. You will have a few HPCs in the vehicle with zoning for the software in the vehicle and on the HPC, but it's certainly going to be a difference from today, that not everything is integrated on the ECU that you get, but hardware is its own part, but the other part will be the software that has to go in a shared HPC. And so the way we are going to test vehicles in the future will change, and so will the requirements also for simulation change. Just as a reminder, so the virtual ECUs, addressing the HPCs, the software in the loop testing, all of this will be affected by the basically by the new architecture. So there are talking about architectures. If you look at different consortia like Covesa, at AUTOSAR, SOFI, you name it. Everyone has an idea of an architecture. OEMs have their idea of an architecture, etc. This is good because, there's no lack in proposed architecture. It's like, again, the Wild West a little bit. Everyone starts to grab their space and claim what they want to do in the future. That's okay, and from ASAM's standpoint, that's good, because we are not trying to standardize architectures. This is not ASAM's role. ASAM does interfaces, ASAM does data formats, ASAM does APIs, protocols. This is what we do. So what's going to be our role in the software-defined vehicle? We look at the data. We look at where the data where the data is created and where the data is consumed, and what do we need to do? What are the APIs? What are the protocols? This is ASAM's role. So for the software-defined vehicle, we stick to what we know from the past and adapt it to changing protocols. Like, for example, the over-the-air update is one of the things that's now coming there, where ASAM is also going into a cooperation with eSync Alliance, just to make sure that upload and download of data can be handled with the different interfaces that we provide and they are compatible. This is our role now, to look and make sure that our APIs are future-proof, as well as the data formats, etc. We are architecture agnostic. Actually, we do not care where things are executed. And it's now everyone is talking about in the car, on premise, on the edge, in the cloud, etc., etc. Yes, distribute the stuff wherever you want, as long as the protocols are fulfilled. Even the user is not really interested where the stuff is stored, as long as you can reach your function via the API. So this is what we keep out of. We do not look into the architecture, we just look into the data flow. And we look at the use cases. We look, are you looking for the development? Are you looking at diagnostics, testing, etc.? And we take care of the artifacts that are required for these different tasks. So depending on the use case, we look what ASAM standard could fit for the use case, and then adapt it accordingly and create the project groups to drive that use case. So we do not really mean to expand our business because the software-defined vehicle is coming. We just mean to concentrate on what we do best. And I've mentioned it a few times, what this is, the data formats, etc. And this is our strength. And whatever comes along this and needs extension and needs harmonization, we do mostly with partnerships. Like I said, eSync Alliance is one of these partnerships we are now entering into. IRMTS, for example, to do cyber physical testing. If you want to hear more about it, I'll be at the booth later on. All of that is what we do with the partners. So the future, what does it mean? There's also other aspects for the future. There is, if we look at how things are changing, we talk more about mobility in the future than about the vehicle alone. We have to look at topics like off-road, test specification I mentioned, driver monitoring becomes, or well, let's say passenger monitoring becomes more important, the quality aspects. We have to look at the, well, what will remain at ASAM is the robustness of our organization. We are, well, with the partnerships and with our member centricity, I think we have a good foundation. And we work on continuous improvement in terms of our strategy, which came up with a new vision, accelerate engineering for mobility, so a little bit beyond the vehicle alone. We look at our processes, we look at our organization in the office, how we do things. So this is what we are doing. After 26 years of ASAM now, still trying to act like a startup and be agile and try to adapt to the market. Conclusions? There's only one conclusion. To whatever the challenge is, there's no standard answer, sure. Because otherwise, well, software-defined vehicle and others, whatever is coming up, the answer may not yet be there, but the standards are the key to the answer. This means we need to agree on how we want to address things. And this is why standards are so important, that we speak the same language, use the same data formats, and are able to exchange data and information. So, well, since this is a conference, I have to announce the next conference. So if you have time in early December, come to our ASAM conference. We will be addressing, like I said, software-defined vehicle, simulation, ADAS, AD, all of this, data recording and other stuff, lots of discussions. And I think my last slide is a little bit, you know, Oktoberfest starts, I think, next weekend, something like this, in Munich. So I want to thank you with something that is more like Oktoberfest, not in ASAM colors, but thanks a lot for your attention. I think we are right on time, and I hope everyone is awake now. Thank you.